Hi, welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. My name is Marie Hopkinson. I'm a Chinese herbalist and an acupuncturist. And today I'm going to be talking about how to best prepare yourself for the coming new year for each different element type. So as you can see, I'm here in my lounge room. Well, you don't know it's my lounge room, but it is my lounge room. This is between Christmas and New Year. And around this time of the year, I like to make a video, or I like to think about what's happening for the new year for sure. But I like to make a video or something that kind of helps people to prepare for the new year. And as a certain element type, which I'll reveal in this video, planning is something that's very strong for me. And it's something that I've always wondered when I was younger, why aren't other people like that?
Are you too good for your home?
Like frustrating to me, like why aren't other people so as driven as I am, or why am I so driven and they're not driven? Am I a strange one? Are they the strange one? And look, in psychology, there's lots of personality typings. The 5-element typing is very broad, right? Now, I'm really into different types, like I just learned about the Enneagram type, but there's Myers-Briggs typing, there's the Big 5 typing. Well, it's not really a personality type, but it's a personality test you can take, and you can find out, how much on a scale you're neurotic, or you have neuroticism, or that you have openness, and those kinds of things. Those things are really interesting, and I'm a big fan of the more you know yourself, the better you can be as a human being, and the better you can kind of know what your strengths are and work towards your strengths, like work with your strengths. So that's what I'm going to talk about mostly in this video. For each type, I'm going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses for those types. And we're going to talk about how things you might want to look out for in 2021, given the state of what we know, that things are going to be similar to last year, I would say, or similar to this year, 2020. We're moving in a state of rapid change. And what does that mean for these different types? So what I'll do in this video is I'll put some timestamps in there for each element type. And so you can just click on the type that you want to hear about, or maybe your partner's a certain type and you want to kind of watch those ones. So I want to just start off the video by saying Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Particularly the Happy New Year part, because I've already done a Merry Christmas video. But I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great festive season, Look, some stuff has happened very close to Christmas around the world. Like I know in London they're in a stage 4 of lockdown, and many two families couldn't come together. So that meant lots of people couldn't even, be together. I'm from Perth, Western Australia. Now we've had it pretty easy in terms of, as long as we don't leave WA, everything's fine. It's like being in the Truman Show. You're just in this bubble and you can't leave. Nothing to see here. But like in Sydney, they had the Northern Beaches outbreak just days before Christmas, really seriously interrupting Christmas and over to New Year plans. And look, there's lots of people that are hurting still from the lockdown and things like that happens in Melbourne. All over the world, there's lots of issues. I know the US is in a state of discombobulation from what's happening there. This is not a political channel or anything like that. But look, I want to say, I know it's hard. I know people have been through a lot. But these things never change. 5 elements aren't going to change in 2020. The basic principles and the understanding of Chinese medicine doesn't change. And that's what I love about it so much. It's like a solid rock foundation. It's looking at our interactions with the environment. And look, diseases come and diseases go. Things become more prevalent or more possible that you might get something wrong with you because of pestilence disease, right? In Chinese medicine, they call it that, which is things like plagues and pandemics and extreme, flus and extreme illnesses and things like that come and go. But then there's also illnesses that happen to our body because of the way we think, because of the way we interact with our emotions, because of the way we eat, the sleep we have or the lack of sleep we have, and all those kinds of things. And so Chinese medicine philosophy is about understanding how our physical body and our emotional body or our mind interacts with the world around us. The world around us doesn't change, right? But our physical bodies and our interactions does change, right? So let's talk about the 5 elements and the personality types. Now, this is purely psychology-based stuff. It's not physical stuff of the elements. I'm focusing on the psychological aspects, like the mental health aspects of these things. So we're going to start with Earth. Now, what I'm going to do with each element is tell you the strengths and the weaknesses for each element in what I think. Now, this is also my opinion, just as a little disclaimer. I'm not a 5-element practitioner. I'm not even a Chinese medicine. No, I am. I am a Chinese herbalist and an acupuncturist. I'm not just like a random person doing this channel. Wow, you just know so much for someone who's never studied it. I'm in a bit of a jovial mood. As you can see, it's the Christmas time and it's really hot here. Like, I'm in Perth and it's like, it's a heat wave. It's night time now when I'm making this. It's nearly 10 p.m, but it's still so hot. And I have to turn all the aircon and everything off to make these videos because otherwise it makes too much of a noise. So anyway, let's get on with it. So Earth. The strength of Earth, one of the strengths of Earth is relationships, right? And Earth people are able to bring about harmony and unity. So some of these things are no-brainers for Earth, for these elements, not just Earth, but any element, right? The strengths, some of the stuff is like, well, yeah, I know that, Marie. But sometimes you don't even know that it's a strength. You just do it with ease and you don't even know that it's a strength to you. So what I'm trying to get at here is saying, this is your strength. What's the best way for you to use that in 2020? So I would say to an Earth element person, like, how can you leverage bringing people together in 2021? Like, how can you leverage that ability to gather groups together, to bring harmony, like the power to the people? And an Earth element person isn't really an authoritarian way of doing that. They're naturally seen as, they can be good leaders, but they're not like a forefront of the group usually, but they'll be instrumental in bringing people together. But they don't necessarily have to have the limelight, but they are good at unifying people. So that's your strength. If you're an Earth person, you're watching this, your strength is unifying people. And so you can bring peace to turmoil situations, where there's unrest, where there's people that have got differing opinions and they all need to kind of come together for some greater purpose or for some reason. That can be one of your greatest strengths, Earth people. It sounds like some kind of alien Earth person. No, but if you're an Earth element type, that's your strength. Now, Earth element people are also very caring and nurturing. And so I would say to you, what do you want to care for? What do you think needs to be nurtured in 2021? In your own life, in your family, in your relationships, in your workplace, in your business, wherever you are, in your community. What could you nurture? Where can you bring that strength of nurturing? The Earth element's about growth and renewing. Now, also, if you haven't already watched the series on the 5 element, I've got a video on the series, the 5 element personality types, and that will explain to you, there's about 25 to 35 minute videos on each type. It's got the element in its natural state or its undiseased state, let's say, right, in its healthy state. And then what happens to that element in 2 ways. It can either become exaggerated, like there's just way too much of it going on, or there's not enough of it going on for that person. And so you couldn't be that type, and you might resonate with some of this stuff, but you could also be out of balance. And that's where you'd need to kind of go and see a practitioner. Now, specifically, a 5 element acupuncturist deals with this stuff in a very unique way, right? It's a specific way that they do this stuff. And they use acupuncture to treat it, right? To treat these imbalances and bring harmony. Now, a regular acupuncturist can work with some of these things in a different way, but not in a 5 element way unless they've been trained in that style. But sometimes what will happen is if you're out of balance, if your element's out of balance and you do some diet and lifestyle things for that, particularly for Earth, it can become, it can affect people's digestion, it can affect your bowels and things like that. So if you did acupuncture or herbs and it affected that, like you treat the physical, then the mental will kind of fix up. Now, the system of herbs I practice particularly looks at, like, when people have a mental health imbalance, right, or like they have a mental health symptom, we treat it through the physical, and then we think, well, if the physical body's in balance, in harmony, in health, then it creates this state for the mental emotional functions to function properly, and so they will then return to health, rather than saying, well, we need to do like talk therapy, or we need to do certain. Now, you might need that as well, but that's not what a Chinese herbalist or acupuncturist is there for. Now, unless they've been trained in that, you might see a practitioner that does a bit of that and they've been trained additionally in it, but just in the stock standard Chinese herbal medicine or acupuncture degrees, practitioners aren't trained to be a counsellor or a therapist in that way. They do get a lot of training in it, like the college where I teach in Australia, they have like 3 or 4 units on psychology and counselling and communication kind of skills, like as in every year for 4 years their students are learning something about that. But they still would encourage students to say, right, if a patient needs that stuff, they need to go elsewhere, because you're not a licensed or a qualified therapist. Just from that, like it's a whole nother thing to study. Anyway, this video's not a rant. So earth element people. I've got something in my eye. Got some hair in my eye. So what's the weakness of earth then? What's the weakness of earth then? Well, earth people can be very loyal. They are loyal people. And sometimes they can be loyal to a fault, right? And so I would say, if you're an earth person, are there things in 2021 that you need to let go of? And that can be really hard for an earth person. Are there any loyalties that you need to let go of? Like relationships where you're just there because you're loyal and you know it's not good for you, you know it's not productive, you know it's not a healthy relationship anymore. Now, it might be a relationship with a business to business relationship. It might be a human being, a person. It's just like a friendship that's become toxic, or even a love relationship that's no longer loving, that's no longer healthy for you. Maybe you don't need to end it, but maybe you need to do something about it. But you need to like think about, is your loyalty, I guess, for an earth element person stopping you from addressing that? Because that can be a reason why earth element people don't act on those things. Earth element people could also be too busy just pleasing others and not leave room for themselves. So in 2021, are there things where you need to think about yourself more? And that's okay. It's okay to prioritize yourself a little bit more, because you probably have a tendency not to do that at all, or to give up your own needs in favor of others' needs. Now that can be good in a way, because as an earth element person, caring for other people, nurturing other people benefits you, right? This is the whole point of it. Like other element types would look at that and think, oh, that's too much. You're helping people too much. You know, I've been on the end of the stick. I'm not an earth element person, but of people criticizing what I do, saying, you're doing that too much, Marie, you're doing it too much. It drives me bonkers, especially when I was younger and I didn't know that there were different types of people. And you know what? What I like to do actually energizes me, and that might drive you nutty, and that you may think that that's too much, or I'm doing the wrong thing or whatever. But if you are energized by something, then that's good. So I'm not criticizing you as an earth person, but I'm just saying that can be a detriment where you are putting others ahead of your own self all the time, and you never put yourself first. Another earth element thing that can happen is earth people could become just too obsessed. Now, thinking, the intellect is part of the earth element, right? So thought, processing, ruminating is kind of an out of balance of that. And obsession can kind of be an out of balance of that as well. So going too far and just thinking and thinking and thinking, and then obsessing and obsessing, like this can happen when people fall in love with someone and it's not reciprocated, right? And they're just obsessively thinking about that other person who doesn't care about them, doesn't even know that they exist, doesn't know that they like them. And you could overly care for somebody that's not reciprocating that back to you. Now, this could be in a relationship, this could be in a situation where you wish there was a relationship. It could be in a situation where you're just draining, it's no longer nurturing you anymore to nurture that person. So you might be a carer for someone who's, needs some paid help as well, right? You can't just care for that person 24 hours a day anymore. Maybe that's not healthy for you. And I just wrote this note here saying, as I was thinking about this today, like, earth element people because they tend to take that role, particularly in families, like if there's someone that needs to be cared for. And then because they're taking that space up, others won't step into the space. And they can kind of sometimes feel a bit resentment that, oh, why don't the others come in and help? And if they simply stopped, I'm not saying stop caring for the person that's relying on your care. But if you were to withdraw that in some way, it makes space for someone else to come in, right? So if you weren't there at all, what would happen? Would the other sisters and brothers come in and help, or would would the person who needs the care, have to get some paid help or something like that? So that can be part of it. Oversharing, like sharing all their resources. If one element was the communist element, I would say the earth would be that, because it kind of wants to give away all of its resource, and that can be good because it nurtures the plant and it nurtures what's needed to be done for the good of society. But sometimes that can just be way too much, and that person ends up owning nothing, ends up having nothing for themselves, right, at the detriment of everyone else. So that's my, not really my predictions, but my suggestions for a healthy earth element person in 2021. All right, let's get on with the fire element. Okay, so fire element people are naturally happy, bubbly, pleasant people to be around, and they tend to have really good connections with people. And one of their strengths is the connection, or helping people see a connection between the earth and the human realm and the spiritual realm. Now, this can take many forms. So you see this with people that become gurus, that become coaches, that become people that kind of transcend, let's say. Now, it doesn't have to be a religious form of connection. It can be a spiritual, emotional almost connection with the earth and the environment that's sort of transcending just what's going on day to day, human-like, what's going on in our heads, sort of almost connecting what's going on with your head, with your heart. And particularly that spiritual aspect. So if that's you and you're a fire element person, you think, yeah, I've always had this affinity for like the world beyond. What's beyond what happens when we die? Like, what is that? What is that? Well, that's something that you should explore as a fire element person. That'll probably benefit you, and you'll probably feel a greater sense of purpose in your life if you do explore that. And so I would say maybe in 2021, is there a place for you to explore that? Is there do you need someone to give you permission? Well, here I am giving you permission to explore that area. If that's you and you think, yeah, I'd like to explore that a bit more and see what's out there. What kind of other spiritual connections can I make? Like what kind of, maybe you're a person that watches a lot of podcasts and listens to a lot of different ideas about those things, and you're very curious about that stuff. Well, or you might be someone who makes podcasts about those things. Well, maybe that's time for you to make a podcast about those things, or I don't know, something like that. Fire element people tend to be very passionate and enthusiastic people. And so in the world, you can use that fire, that passion and that enthusiasm. It not only fuels you and makes you feel good, but it fuels people around you. And so that would be my advice to you if you're a fire person and you think, well, what am I supposed to be doing in 2021? How could you best use your passion and your enthusiasm for whatever it is that you're passionate and enthusiastic about to help others get out of, like, you can help lift, you can be a great igniter of passion in others. You can help lift people out of depression, help lift people out of a state of mundane and let them, experience something like that. And this leads me to my next point. Fire element people tend to be very persuasive people, right? Now, this can have really negative connotations. So when you say persuasive, or when you say selling something, let's say, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to be a pushy old salesperson. That's horrible. In a sales job, persuasion can be really beneficial, right? So I'll tell you how it's beneficial how it's a lost kind of art, I think, is you used to be able to go into a store and you would see someone who's an expert on something and they would kind of tell you the pros and cons of those different types of the thing you're looking at, and you'd be able to make a decision and you'd go away with the purchase, right? Well, now most people do their research online, they kind of come in, they know what they want, and so less and less people in stores are kind of trained to even know diddly squat about the products, right? I've gone into some stores and I demand people to know what they're selling. Because if that's your store, like I used to own a store, I used to run a retail store, and so it was my job. If I put a product in my shop, I have to know what that does and how that best can help somebody and what it can do and what it's for, right? That's your job. Sorry, but that is. And so it's a little bit of a pet hate of mine that you go into stores and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know it. Well, they won't talk to you. Sometimes you can't even find a person. So sometimes you go into a store and you leave disappointed as a consumer. And so that art of having someone there to persuade you, not in a bad way at all. It can be a very positive experience. So that person, like no value can be received until you've made a purchase. Like I can think about light globes all I want, but unless I bloody go and buy one, I'm not getting the light turns on in my house, right? Like if my globe is blowing, and this has happened to me before, where I've got this specific kind of globe, you know, you go to a store and you're like, I need one that's dimmable and it's, you know, the right fitting and everything. You buy one, you come home, it's smashes straight away because it's not the right one. So you go back to the store, you can't find the person that's going to explain to you, you just want to get this product. And there's like maybe 50 different kinds of light globes there and you still can't find the one that you want. How frustrating and how disappointing. How great would it be if there was someone there to persuade you and use that art of persuasion in a positive way, in a way that brings value to you, and to say this is the right one for you, and they sell you the product that you want. Well, that's a positive selling experience, right? So fire people often find themselves in sales roles, but not always, right? But persuasion also doesn't have to be negative. So the point I mentioned before this was that fire people can help, like, lift people out of a depression, help them experience that passion and that joy that they easily experience. And part of that can be persuasion. So you might be in a group of people, let's say, and you've got a couple of people like, oh, we don't really want to do it. But if there's some fire people there and they really want to do it, they're going to say, hey guys, let's come along. And so these other people end up having a good time. They might not even say that they had a good time, but only because that fire person was there sort of saying, hey, come on, you know, you don't be by yourself, don't be alone or whatever. And so that could be very, very positive. So fire people are very magnetic and charismatic. So my advice to you as a fire person would be to say, hey, what things in 2021 do you need to be more passionate about, be more charismatic about, be more engaged with? Like what things bring you joy that you love doing? Maybe there's a little project you want to do. You want to write a book, you want to start a blog, you want to start a YouTube channel, whatever, like this kind of stuff, or connect with people in a certain way. You might want to start a group, a support group for some kind of health problem or just some kind of experience people have had. Those things can be very positive and very beneficial, not just to you, but to the other people in there. Right, the weaknesses of the fire type. One of the things that the fire type do very well is seeking pleasure and intimacy. And what can happen as a weakness of this is that the fire type actually need pleasure and need intimacy, particularly the intimacy. So they're not the types of people that would be alone or certainly wouldn't like being alone, and they wouldn't seek out to be alone. But if you found yourself being alone and you're a fire type, a weakness of that situation can be one, that you might seek pleasure in the wrong places, let's say, or very quickly, or form maybe be sucked into different kind of relationships that are not beneficial to you just because you don't want to be alone. And also if you're a fire type and you're in a relationship, but for some reason you are not getting the intimacy and the pleasure that you need in that relationship, then it can be very tempting for fire type of people to look for it elsewhere. And so that can lead to your existing relationship breaking down, and maybe people cheating on their partner or things like that very easily. I'm not saying that it's okay because you're a fire type, it's okay to do that. But there are some types can get away in life without too much pleasure and intimacy. But fire types of people kind of need it. They thrive on it, but they also need it. So I would suggest that you communicate your needs to your partner as early on in the relationship as you can if you know you're this type of person, particularly if they're not that type of person. So if you've got two fire types together, well, they both need intimacy and they're going to be looking for it all the time. Because if you're a fire type and your partner's not looking for intimacy, like pleasure and intimacy as much as you are, they might be fueled by other things, right? They just get sucked into their work and they're just busy all the time in that. And that's making them thrive in a way or fueling them. Whereas you're, away from that situation, you're like, well, what about me? I need time with you. I need pleasure. I need intimacy. So it can be really hard. So I guess my advice would be to yeah, communicate as quickly as you can with your partner about that need, if you haven't already. And to also just recognise that if you are alone for a period of time, that it's hard, and you probably need to seek out relationships with people, not necessarily, sexual relationships, but there is that need, and you don't want to be in that void for too long, having, so if you move countries and you're used to having physical contact and seeing friends and family all the time, and then suddenly you don't have that. As a fire type, that can be really, really disheartening to you. Like, it can be quite detrimental. The other weakness of fire that can happen is very easily a fire person can get reality distorted in their world. So they can get to a point where this can be sometimes mental illness, and it can just sometimes be
Don't you know I'm loco?
a period of time that they go through where they're just easily, it's just like reality is distorted. That's probably the best, I don't know how else to say that. So if you need help, you need to seek out help, right? Professional help. You need someone that you can talk to, whether it's a partner, whether it's a good friend, whether it's a therapist, something like that. So if you feel like your reality isn't, you feel like your reality may be distorted, then that's when you can seek help. But sometimes you don't know until it's too late, until something detrimental has happened. So what's good for fire type of people, if you know you're a fire type, is to just have other friends around you that can keep you in check, that are not fire type of people. Especially, like, let's say wood or water or metal types that are a bit more grounded and a bit more able to say, hey, that's a bit crazy. And that's a bit that's a bit of a distorted perception that you've got of the world. That person probably doesn't really think like that. So let's say, you've got a distorted perception of like, oh, that person really hates me and they just out to get me. And another person might say, hey, that's not what that behaviour doesn't say that to me at all. That behaviour just says that person's going through a hard time. They don't necessarily hate you or are out to get you. This was meant to be a short video, but it's turning out to be a long one. So wood, let's do wood next. Wood types of people are not afraid to navigate the unknown. And I think one thing I wrote down for this is, like, in 2021, I think other elemental types will need your support in 2021. We know that it's going to be a difficult year, I would say. Let's hope it's not. But it probably will be, and that can be very challenging. Like, navigating change for most types can be really hard. Now, wood types tend to they tend to be less, how should we put it? I don't think any type really loves change, but wood types tend to be better with change than other types. Wood types tend to like, and look, some of this stuff can get a little bit stereotypical a little bit as well. But if you are good with change and that's a strength for you, then don't be afraid to reach out and help others navigate the change of life. Part of the strength of wood can be adapting to adversity, right? And adapting to the change. So think about businesses and industries that have gone out of business because they haven't been able to adapt. Like, as a wood type, if that's you in your business, like, that's a strength for you. And so you should be thinking about, you have the skills to be able to adapt and help your business navigate away from the adversity, navigate through the adversity, I should say, probably, and to change and to adapt to that change. So that's something that you can kind of use as a skill in 2021, I think, more than ever. So I would say, like, what businesses, what systems, what processes, even in family or in society, in social groups or not-for-profit groups or things like that you're in, how can you help navigate with your adaptability skills, right? How can you help navigate the change? Another strength of wood is action. So these types tend to be easy to take action, put the legs on the ideas very easily. So there might be things where you're in a group of people where there's a bit of procrastination, where there's a bit of a standstill. You can get in there and say, hey, guys, this is what we need to do. Let's just move forward. Wood types of people tend to be more easy to take a risk and to just get out there and give it a go. And so I think you have to ask yourself as a wood type, where is this needed? Because one of the other detriments of wood types is they can be very easy to do a lot of stuff, but you want to put your focus where it's going to be most needed, or where you are driven towards. Now, the other thing that comes with being a wood type is you tend to have a good sense of purpose.
Nice.
That's part of like direct life direction and life planning is a wood element aspect. So this doesn't mean other elements, other people don't have this, but it's predominant type in wood. So if I was to make a video saying how to make your New Year's goals, wood type of people wouldn't even watch that because they would have already made their New Year's goals. I'd be like, don't be silly, I'm not watching a video a day before New Year's about how to make a goal. I made my goals in November, right? So that can be a skill that you can share with other people. There are people that don't know how to make goals. There are people that don't know how to access their ability to make a goal, to do life planning, to think about their purpose and their greater purpose in the world. So that sort of brings me to my next point about the weaknesses of wood is, like I said before, they can sometimes do a lot of stuff. And in a disharmony of wood, a wood element person that's not in balance can kind of get a bit discombobulated and kind of do lots of things. And it's not very focused. It's not all in the same direction, right? So you kind of need to think about where should I best put my action? Because you're going to take action. You're going to take action at something because that's your nature. So where should I best put my action? So you want to spend a little bit more time strategizing than just doing, right? So other elemental types are better at strategizing and thinking about stuff. The wood element's more likely to do it, but they don't spend as much time strategizing and thinking about it. So maybe you need to get with a metal or a water element type of person if you're in a group and utilize their ability to strategize and think before you just go off half-cogs. Kind of do something. My next point about wood is, as a weakness, is it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to take a break from time to time. Now, I'm not saying you want to start the year with a break because that probably wouldn't be your nature. But wood people can feel guilty about taking a break. Or they don't feel necessarily energized from breaks like other people would. But we kind of think about the relationship between wood and water. So water nourishes wood, right? You can't just have all wood with no water. Now, water is the stillness, is the reflection, is the sitting back. Not necessarily, it could be water-related things, right? It could be getting in a pool or being in the coolness of that stillness. It doesn't have to be for a long time, but it can be very beneficial to a wood person to take a little break. And that gives them a chance, when they're stopping doing something, to kind of let their mind go, right, what is it that where am I going to go next? Sort of like, when you're pulling back one of those things that you, those lackey things, right? The lackey guns, and you've got the ammo in the back here. The further you pull it back, the more the more power it's going to have when you release it. And sometimes with a wood person, it's a bit like that. They've got to just take that time, let that thought happen, and then go, right? Rather than just bang, go. And also another weakness of wood can be sometimes running out of steam, not realizing that they haven't put in the things that nourish them, or they've forgotten to do things like eat regular meals, look after themselves, have proper sleep, that kind of stuff. And then if they become a bit unhealthy, then my neighbours are making a big noise. Then they can become indecisive and a bit distracted, and they'll be less productive. So they'll be doing a lot of stuff, but not productive in what they're doing. So if you're a wood element person, I would say you definitely would be making your goals and think about what do you really want to achieve, and then how are you going to achieve it. And when you're in that day-to-day stuff of taking action, you need to constantly remind yourself of the goals. Now, I'm a wood element person. I know what it's like to have all of those weaknesses and all of those strengths. And so that's something that's helped me a lot in the last probably, I don't know, three or 5 years, probably 5 years, three to 5 years. At some points, I'll write my goals down every day, right? My 5 goals for the year, or whatever those, maybe your 3 goals. Write your to-do list, all that sort of stuff. That's probably normal for a wood person to do that. But it stops you from getting distracted because you're like, oh, shiny thing over here. Oh, this, oh, I'm going to chase a snuggie over here. I'm going to create this product now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And so you can get a lot of things on the simmer. You can get a lot of things on the go. And you're probably less likely to say no to things because you don't want to admit that you can't do it because you're a doer. You love doing things. And so that can kind of help you focus more and get the productivity that you're looking for by writing your goals down and then repeating them, like literally writing them again or looking at them every day. So I hope that helps you. That's the wood element. Right, next one we're going to talk about is water. And I'm going to have a sip of water. Okay, so the philosopher is the water element. Some strengths of water are the quest for truth, right? And water element types are often debunking myths. And something tells me that there's going to be a need for that in 2021. Let's just put it like that. So if you're a water element person, you tend to be quite a thinking person, an intelligent person. You can be a lot inside your head and less doing, particularly thinking about water and wood. They can be very similar in some ways, but a wood person will be more of a doer, whereas a water person will be more of a thinker. That's why they kind of call it the philosopher. So you've generally got a good sense of planning and thinking, right? But it's more based on introspection rather than the world around you. It's probably more based on the world within you, the world you perceive things to be or how you'd like things to be. And also water element people can have a really good vivid imagination and be very visionary and projecting ideas and thinking of things. So I want to ask you, if you're a water element person, where would the best place be for you to utilise your ability to, as a visionary in 2021? Where's the best space for you to do that? Maybe in your workplace, maybe in your business, maybe at home with your family. Where do you see things going and how can you orchestrate that to happen? You might want to have goals like, oh, I want my kids to do better at school, or I want to give opportunity for, my partner to do something, or something that you want for your family life. You want better relationships in your family, or maybe your greater family, not just your, might be, long lost relationships that need to be repaired or something like that. And so think, like, what do you envision for those things, and what's the disparity between what it is now and where you envision it, and how could you make that happen in 2021? Water types tend to be very open to ideas, and that can be a great strength of seeing lots of possibilities and not being closed, right? So not being stuck on a particular trajectory, but being open and thinking like that. Another thing about water types that will help you navigate the tumultuous journey of 2021 is water types of people have wells, like reserves of strength. Right? You may not even realise this. These are kind of people where they get through a tough time and they're like, I don't know how we got through that. Or within the group, you're the person that people lean on a little bit more. You're the person that people tend to draw upon you, right? So a well is something where you go to it and you get the water out of it when you need it, right? And it's there, it's always there. And you dig deep, or you get, that wells were places which were, we don't kind of have wells in the Western world now that we kind of know of, because we just have turn the water on in a tap. But water is a source of life, right? Without it, you're going to die. It's one of the basic needs. So you can be, as a water element type of person, you're kind of a source of life for your community. You might be a source of life for your family, for your business, for your, for social groups or things like that. And so as a community, you're your role is often, within the community, your role is often that source of strength for others, and that's okay, right? It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not something to think, oh, I wish people wouldn't use me so much, but that's part of who you are, and it probably benefits you in some ways to have that, as long as you have your own space as well. So a weakness of water could be, or a detriment of water, I should say, not a weakness, would be if they didn't have their own time, because they need that introspection. They need that time for their own self to kind of build up the reserve again, right? And to, be like that. One of the weaknesses of water can be that there's too much thinking and not enough doing. So kind of like opposite of wood, right? Where wood can kind of have the opposite, like too much doing and not enough thinking. Water can have that inactivity can kind of be too sedentary. Now, water types of people tend to like philosophy kind of jobs. They kind of think and strategize, and maybe others in the organisation will go and do the doing of it. And also can be maybe very good teachers, very good, philosophers and teachers and artists and things like that, strategists. So I think one of the things for water types, I would say, is how can you empower a little bit more doing in 2021? Like, are there things that you've thought about in previous years? Oh, I wish I could always do, I've always thought about doing this, or I've always imagined, because you probably have a vivid imagination, I've always imagined myself as a piano player, but you've never actually taken any lessons or even purchased a piano. Well, maybe this is something you need to do, right? And so you will get some empowerment of doing that. You will get some benefit out of doing it. You don't have to just imagine all those things. What projects or creative concepts that you've been working on, you might have worked really hard on these things, do you need to actually take action on, this year? What of those things that you need to take action on? One of the weaknesses of water can be that you're just too inwardly focused, right? Because you get that benefit from that introspection, but you can be a little bit too inwardly focused, and that could be at the detriment of what's going on in the outside world. My final point and my final idea for water in 2021 would be to encourage you that you probably need to plan some social connections in 2021. So water element people, because they're so good at being in their own mind, they enjoy that place. They don't necessarily need other people, not like the fire element who needs social, who needs, friends and family all around them. They need, pleasure and connection and those kinds of things. Water element people can do very, very well for long periods of time without other people. They're like their own well, right? They're their own reservoir of source like that. So what you kind of need to do is purposefully plan to make social connections, because you do need that. You do need some of that. You can't just be all about yourself. And so that would be my advice, So you don't need lots and lots of friends. You don't need hundreds of friends. You might only need 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 really good friends. But if you neglect those friendships, then they kind of fade away, and then you don't get the benefit of it. Hope you enjoyed that, water type people. Let's get on to the metal type.
This is a top to a very, very special, because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there?
So the metal type, or the alchemist, what are the strengths of metal? Well, metal tend to be very orderly and very organised people. So they probably purchased their planner for 2021 much earlier than everybody else. They have their calendar organised. They like to know things in advance. If you're just tuning into this and you've missed the other bits of, I did mention that I've got a video on these different types, a full-length video on each type. So that'll go into the types in more detail. And if you're not sure what your type is, you can also go on to, I'll put the link in the description below, for a test that you can do, and there's a book that test is based on. The book's called Between Heaven and Earth, and that is a Chinese medicine book about this stuff. So if you're a metal person and you tend to be organised and orderly, I would say to you in 2021, how could you utilise this skill better? How could you really leverage this skill? Like, where would you get the most bang for buck out of this? Because you're very good at this. And some people are not very good at this. And you probably get frustrated by other people that are not. But it's, you can kind of be a person that brings calm to the chaos. You can kind of be a person that brings order to things. You tend to be not easily flappable, right? You're not easily in a frenzy of things. I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that someone like Jordan Peterson would be a metal type of person, because when I listen to his interviews, he tends to be very calm. He takes his time and he just answers questions, and he's not, needing to have an argument with someone for, he's not getting into a frenzy. And a lot of his psychological stuff, which is not necessarily his personal ideas, but they are based on order, right, and chaos, and bringing order to the chaos. Anyway, that was for free. This is something I was thinking of when I was making these notes for this video. Metal people tend to be very good at boundaries. So that could be something that you might be able to leverage this year, how you're good at keeping boundaries or helping others to get boundaries in their life. I think a challenge for metal people this year is going to be to pick your battles. Metal element people like things to be the same. They probably don't like change they certainly wouldn't want change for just change's sake, right? There'd have to be a reason and purpose for that change. They wouldn't just come in and rearrange the bedroom and all the furniture in it just for the sake of it. And with so much change coming in this year, in 2021, I think metal element people need to pick what they're going to fight for, because it can kind of seem like, well, we need to fight for everything to restore the order because everything's changing. But you wouldn't be able to do that. And there's hopefully enough metal people around to kind of fight for order in the places where we need it to be fought for. And on the other hand, there's other types of people that are like, no, we need the chaos or we need the change to bring about something new. But there are some things where we probably need to fight for. And what are those things that are worth fighting for? I think that's what you need to ask yourself as a metal person. What are the things I want to fight for? What are the things I'm willing to put my effort and my energy in? Because you won't be able to do everything. What are the weaknesses of metal element types? So they tend to be highly committed and loyal people. Now, you might say that's not a weakness, Marie. It's a great strength, but within every strength there's a weakness. And the weakness of being highly committed and loyal is sometimes metal types of people can just keep going down a track that's not beneficial to them in a relationship. And I think maybe you need to, if you're a metal person, there might be something you need to let go of. And there might not be as well. I'm not trying to say there is. Just because you're loyal to something doesn't mean you have to let go of it. But that can be a place where you're blindsided easily, right? Which means it just kind of comes at you from nowhere kind of thing. And you think, where did this come from? Because you're so loyal, you don't see the need, to change, or, you just stick with something because you're loyal. Maybe Chris Brown is a metal person. Because he wrote that song, These Hoes Ain't Loyal. I don't know. You need to give yourself space to let things go if you are going to let something go, right? And grief is the emotion associated with metal, grief and sadness as well. So that would be my advice to you. Like, it's good to kind of have a clean out before the start of the new year, right? But metal element people tend to want to hold on to things. And in a disorder, like in a real state of disorder, metal element people can be hoarders because they just can't let go. They literally can't let go of anything, right? Or, things that have no purpose or no use, no utility. They just can't let those things go. Now, that's a very extreme, right at the extreme state of it. Somewhere in the middle is a person that likes things to be the same, likes the order of things, but their tendency is to kind of just let's not make a ruffle, like let's not change things too much. Yeah, so metal element people might be highly committed to things that it may not be benefiting you anymore, and that's something I wanted to mention. The last one for metal would be, as a weakness, the striving for perfection. So this can be good because you're probably a really good proofreader. You probably produce very high quality stuff. But that striving for protection, that striving for perfection can lead to a lot of disappointment in metal people because nothing's ever good enough. Even if it's really good, it's never, because you're striving for perfection, it's almost impossible to attain. You're almost like flick off the compliments people give you. Like, they're like, wow, that's amazing, that's really good. And you're like, oh yeah, because you can see just one, all you can see is the flaw. All you can see is the thing that's not right about it. And that can be beneficial, let's say, in some jobs, right? Where your job is to pick out the flaws, where your job is to see the one thing that's not right about it. Like, one of these things is not like the others, you know, and that's your job to kind of do that. I kind of think of that, about that when I've been recording some of my music, right? Like, some people have better ears than others, and some people can really hear stuff, and I'm like, I can't hear that. Like, you know, some people I've worked with have got really good ears, and some people in the music industry got terrible ears because they've just been in bands all the time and they can't hear. And their ears are kind of cactus from all the gigging that they've done. There's some people that got really, really, like, they can just hear little noises that you're like, I can't hear that little noise. And that little noise will annoy them until they get rid of it, until they can make it perfect, right? And that can be very beneficial in a job like that. Let's say you're a surgeon. You want a surgeon who's perfect. You don't want a surgeon who's 98% accurate. You want 100% accuracy. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there are some things where you don't need that level of perfection in. And I think as a metal person, if you are a metal person, well, you probably are because you're watching this bit of the video, maybe that perfectionism is benefiting you in some areas of your life, but it's not necessarily benefiting you in other areas of your life. Does it need that attention to detail? So, because it could be very disappointing kind of life, because it's never going to live up to those expectations. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. So my advice would be to pick which things in 2021 will be perfect, and the things you can let go on a little bit. So look, I hope this series has been useful and helpful to you. And if it has, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like. Let me know in the comments if this has helped you, how you're feeling about this series. I've had lots of good feedback about the start of the series. I just want to make a little video before New Year to kind of help you with your planning and with your ideas for New Year. I hope you're doing well, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video soon. Great. Get the fucking coughs now.
I think I'm getting the black lung, Bob.
Now, also, if you haven't already watched the series on the 5 elements, I've got a series called The 5 Element Personality. That didn't come out well. And another thing about water people, which will help you in this year, is they tend to be wells of, like a reservoir. And water element types are often debunking myths, right? They're looking for the truth. My neighbours are having a fight.